So how good could Auburn's 2026 class be?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Brian Smith, recruiting expert, hanging out with us. Welcome back. It's been far too long. When you look at this 2026 class, Brian, I mean, Auburn's off to a hot start where I think we're about to see this 2026 class kind of start to see another slew of commits coming just across the board. I'll talk about like kind of the timing of what you expect this cycle to look like in a second. But of the 5 guys committed, Hezekiah Harris, Denairius Tootle, J. Mike, Denairius Gray, Wayne Henry, all these guys got decent chatter around when they've committed, and I got a feeling the chatter's about to pick up again. Who's flying under the radar here? Because these are all big names.
Oh, that's easy. It's Wayne Henry. Okay. He's my favorite kid out of the group in terms of just pure football player.
Lowest ranked guy, by the way.
But you watch his film, and he's the guy that is the first one into the fire. Like if he was a firefighter, he would win all kinds of awards. He might also be the craziest guy. Led the team in tackles for loss, and he plays at St. Francis. For those of you that don't know, that's a national top 10 program.
Blake Woodby, Bryce Diaz.
Yeah.
Yep.
Woodby talked to me about this young man when I was at Under Armour. I said, just give me an update on him, what you think about. I had no idea. He said flat out he's the best player he's ever played with. And he said he's just a dog. He said he could play nickel or he could play safety. Doesn't really matter. And he's the biggest hitter on the team. I'm like, holy crap. Because he's a $160, $165.
Yeah.
If he's, he's 5'8"-ish, but he just finds a way to make it to the ball, and he brings his hard hat, bro. He's fast as all get out. So
yeah,
I don't know how
Darius Smith also from St. Francis in this.
Oh,
class.
yeah.
I mean, what a weird pipeline that is formed between St. Francis and Auburn. I assume that's 90% DJ Durkin. I'm sure there's other factors there, but it's kind of amazing.
Durkin probably knows everybody there, I'm sure. If you're at the University of Maryland, it's an hour away. You have to recruit it. So I'm sure DJ obviously knows it. But this is a kid you can plug and play at different spots. Auburn's class, they just signed the defensive back group. You and I talked about it the other day. They got guys that can play at different spots. We're not 100% sure. And even talking to some of them, Fagans, he's like, I don't care where I play. And Eric Winters has said, I'll probably play the nickel spot, but he just wants to play. This is another one of those kind of kids. You can always find versatile players as more value, and that's what we're getting here.
But Wayne Henry at the next level is a middle of the field defender, correct? Either safety spot or nickel. He's going to be one of those 3. Yeah.
Yeah. His mentality is to hit first, ask questions later. So he's a safety. That's kind of how I look at it.
Makes sense. As far as other guys, like I think Denairius Gray was the first one to commit chronologically, and this is a guy that you're familiar with. I mean, you know that part of the state super well. Down in Florida, I mean, he committed forever ago. You're starting to see him post more offers that he received. I saw that he got offered by Ohio State just a few days ago. It's always a little concerning. It's like, okay, especially when you've been committed so long. But Denairius Gray at receiver, like, I mean, what do you like about him? He's
long as a tree, and he's a kid that. He plays for George. He's the receiver coach at Chaminade, who there's a guy named Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. That's a solid player that he helped bring along. Yeah, he's solid. That's the connection there. Like if George tells Ohio State they need to take a kid, they're probably going to offer it. And they know receivers. I forget what the number of state titles that Chaminade's won now. It's insanity.
Okay.
But they prove it. So they've got a lot of pull when they tell kids, hey, you should look at this school and vice versa. So, but if I was a receiver and I got an Ohio State offer, I'd post it too, just for the record. I get it.
Yeah. And I'd really consider it too, especially if he has a relationship with Jeremiah. Like, why wouldn't you?
I'm sure there's
got to be a factor, right?
There's got to be dialogue. But Jeremiah, for those that are wondering, is this rare receiver I've seen since this guy named Randy Moss. So Randy's still that's top of the board that I've ever seen film of, but Jeremiah's too. Denairius can play outside. He can play slot. He can move around. He's been put into a lot of different spots at Chaminade, and he's well coached. He's always trained in the offseason. I just think he's a guy that could play several different positions for Auburn. He's a kind of a cross. He's not quite as big as Cam, but at the same time, he gets in and out of his break so well. He's a more polished receiver at this stage than Cam probably was playing at Chaminade.
Okay.
That's fine. I think he's a guy that would play a lot at minimum by his sophomore season at Auburn. And I know Auburn's receiver room is not a problem now. That has completely changed since you and I started talking. That's for darn sure.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, they flipped that room 100%. 100%. Then the rest are in-state defensive guys. Jamichael Garrett from Gulf Shores, who I guess transferred. That's a thing, right?
Yeah, he's
transferred
going to Auburn.
Yeah, which is awesome. I guess that helps Auburn, I guess.
I mean, he's 12 seconds from campus now.
Yeah. Shadarius Tootle, solid Mobile kid. And then Hezekiah Harris, who's the top-rated player right now. I think he's a 5-star on some services. But, I mean, just you talk about the upside of, the front 7 defensive guys. I mean, this could be a really good class.
Oh, I mean, length, size, production, measurables of all kinds, they fit what you're looking for a Southeastern Conference defense. Let's start with Hezekiah. You can't teach 6'4", 6'5". You can't teach arms like tree limbs, and you can't teach his natural first step quickness. He's a speed rusher.
Yeah.
We both know, if we were talking portal right now, it would be one of the first 3 spots we talked about beyond, obviously, quarterback. Quarterback's its own entity.
Mm-hmm.
But defensive end pass rushers might be number 1 after that. It's debatable. And this is the kind of guy that keeps you from having to overspend in the portal. Getting guys like this is not easy. Having him in your backyard, he's a Huntsville area kid. That's a battle that, let's be honest, Auburn doesn't usually beat Bama for that kid. But Bama screwed up and didn't go after him hard. This is a story you and I have talked about 100 million times on this show.
You hate to see it. Truly.
I know it bothers you greatly. And
I'm so bummed that they messed up the recruitment of Hezekiah Harris. I'm so bummed about it.
Zach and sarcasm are hanging out right now.
Always. Yeah, I mean, this guy, I don't think you have to know a whole lot about football to look at Hezekiah Harris and be like, no, this is a guy that you want on your team. I mean, and you talked about the importance of edge rushers and just the ability to rush the passer, and you can't have too many of those guys. And Auburn's in a situation now where they're stacking edge rushers. You have a class with Jamonte Waller and Joe Phillips. Then you got Jared Smith coming in, and then obviously you've got guys like Hezekiah Harris. They're going to all be there at the same time. There's a lot. That's a lot for an opposing offense to have to deal with.
But if you think about the SEC, how often do you go into games, say 5, 6, 7, 8 and beyond with everybody healthy?
Oh, very few.
1 in 10 years? You know what I mean? This is why Saban's teams and some of the teams at Georgia, LSU, they always had 1 or 2 guys out, but they still had 1 or 2 other guys that were physically more gifted than yours. That's what this is.
Yeah.
Freeze talked about it when in his very first press conference. They were 3 classes away from being where we need.
Right.
It's just true. I mean, that roster was not in the stratosphere where it needs to be for Auburn. That's how you get there. So it's exciting because we like going to practice and saying, okay, now I get why it's seeing them. It's different. And their roster has changed so much.
I'm there with you, man. I totally am there with you. All right. So what should we expect from a timeline standpoint? I know it's somewhat shifted with new rules and the focus on early signing day and all that, but kind of feeling it's about to ramp up. Brian, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong in just a second, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. Rocket Money can help you find any subscription that you forgot that you are paying for, or maybe even paying for twice. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and help lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 per year. That's very good. Cancel your unwanted subs and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Brian Smith, Auburn recruiting expert, hanging out with us here today. So the timing of all of this, I know the portal was clearly the focus. At what point do we start seeing the focus change from, okay, we're done with the portal, to, okay, let's start ramping up the 2026 recruiting?
Pretty much right now, the next 2 weeks, every team in the country has some kind of junior day set up.
Okay.
How that ends up going for Auburn is your guess as good as mine. But based on the last 2 years, I can guarantee you one thing. The focus will be within a 250-mile radius of Auburn, Alabama.
Yeah.
It's worked so far. Why would you?
And St. Francis Academy.
Well, that is also a valid point. That is bizarre, but it's working, brother. So you know what?
I'm not going to say stop. No question about it. But so yeah, I mean, we're about to see that push now. I mean, obviously, 2025 is done with the exception of, it seems like Auburn's going to get one guy, Omar Mabson, on signing day, which almost feels ridiculous to say now when the whole class is signed. But we got to change the name of signing day, or we got to call it late signing day or something like that. But I mean, so you're about to see folks really ramp up and possibly kind of go ahead and get in the boat early is what we can expect.
I would think that Auburn will be roughly at 10 commitments by the end of February. And that's conservatively. They could be more.
5 more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then it gets into, for Auburn now, it's about balance, keeping guys interested that you really like, but you're still waiting on the elite of the elite. And it's that game. Those kids know they can wait because they are the elite of the elite. It's a little bit of Russian roulette. So you got to get those kids on visits in May and June, and it's just see how that plays out.
Yeah. The one guy Auburn's expected to sign on signing day, Omar Mabson. If you watched his stuff at all, have you been able to spend any time watching him?
Yeah, he's really talented. Strong as an ox, has athleticism, change direction well. I mean, that's an SEC football player all day long. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with taking him at all.
Yeah. I mean, local kid, Auburn High School running back, obviously, and was able to do it at 7A level in Alabama.
He's a horse, dude.
You take that.
He's kind of like Jarquez playing style. Very, very
interesting.
Very
interesting. Just power, has some shiftiness, has some speed, but
the first guy's going to take it. I mean, you're making a business decision to tackle him head on.
Yeah,
like Jarquez in that regard. Jarquez is not fun to tackle either.
No, I'm sure the dynamic of reclassifying, being a year younger as a running back, how does that change how you evaluate him? I mean, it seems like he's going to, assuming he comes to Auburn, he'd be the 5th back, assuming no one leaves after the spring window, which this gives you some security if he is the 4th guy. Like, do you have to go get somebody else? We'll have that conversation and cross that bridge when we get there. But is this a guy who's a lock to be a redshirt, or do you think he can play in the SEC a year early?
Oh, I think it's the latter. Mentality-wise,
great.
In terms of, like, when I met him last spring at a practice at Auburn High, and I walked up to him, I said, he looks like he borrowed Emmitt Smith's legs circa 1990. Like, his upper legs are humongous. He's 5'9", 210, and doesn't have body fat.
Yeah, just so much power.
Like professional deadlifter, a guy that does those kinds of lifts and doesn't struggle with it. But he also picks the holes well. He can play slot. He can catch the ball out of the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing, like any other running back, it's the ultimate test. How well did they pass protect? And I've never met a freshman running back that was any good at it. They got to get him up to speed because they just don't have to that much in high school. They just don't.
Yeah.
So, and it's different anyway when you're going against a defensive end that weighs 245.
Yeah.
Compared to some high school kid.
So we've had this discussion with some other folks on this show, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts because opinions are kind of all over the place on it. And it's hard to compare them because their style is different, level of competition is different, their age is different. But when you look at Omar Mabson and Alvin Henderson, how would you compare those two?
They're different backs. They both do well between the tackles, but I would say Alvin is the guy that's more likely to bust it to the perimeter.
Okay.
And beat you down the sideline. He has really good shifty moves. Not that Omar doesn't, but if I could take one or the other, I would go his route, and then I'd go Omar with this straight ahead. Like, they'll both run over you.
Yeah.
But Omar's power is ridiculous. And that's one of the real reasons I think that Auburn's willing to take him a year early. There's nothing he can do physically to really change. He is who he is. And running back is the one spot where guys, like, I know the rule for the NFL is you got to be 3 years removed from high school.
Yeah.
Running back, like, there's a handful of guys that have come out like they're just, there's no reason they're ready now. And
right.
so Omar is.
Yeah. Assuming you could take care of the football, and all that, and you're not going to fumble, and you can just take the load of it all. Like, why can't you play? So
well, that's the reason. Yeah, it's hard, man. That position, I think it's the reason why guys want to class, because they get beat up so much, and they want to get to the NFL quicker before they get hurt.
Yeah, no, I mean, you only get so many chances for contracts, for sure. The dynamic of the portal this spring, and you'd have Damari Austin, Jeremiah Cobb, Alvin Henderson, and Omar Mabson. I feel like I'm forgetting, and then Darrell Robinson, the transfer from UConn.
I like him.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't think you keep everybody. Do you?
My guess is every team now goes into the spring expecting to lose somebody from their room and across the board, especially quarterback. That position is a sieve. It's a crisis in college football. No two quarterbacks.
Auburn's in a weird spot where I think they're actually going to keep all four of theirs, but we'll see.
They had a wild ride, and they fixed it pretty quick. I'll give them credit, but that was wild there for a minute.
And some of the needs they had to fill, like, hey, we need a veteran who's okay with being a backup.
That was where I got nervous, because
then like Ashton Daniels isn't great, but it's like, for what you signed him for, it's like you could do a lot worse.
Oh yeah, to be honest, they got lucky. It could have been a guy you're like, oh dear God, if anything happens to the starter here, I don't want Deuce playing Deuce doesn't want to come in and be the guy. He knows he needs a year to develop. Situationally, it's fine, but other than that, he's not ready to play as a starter in the Southeastern Conference. That's rough.
And then filling it with Tanner Bailey to be like the fourth quarterback, like what a fascinating situation, like truly fascinating. Former SEC quarterback, transfers to Auburn just to be a student and be done with football. And it's like, oh, you happen to have a former SEC guy that's on campus with eligibility left. Just truly fascinating.
Hey, man, sometimes it works out in your favor. But
to
answer your question, I expect one of the running backs to leave. And if you picked a position for me, my answer is yes, somebody will leave. That's just the way it is pretty much. Yeah.
Right.
And Auburn knows that. You have to play it out, worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't happen, it's a bonus.
This is part of it. Are you spent some time watching, which All-Star game was it? Was it Under Armour? Under Armour All-Star game. You got to see a few future Auburn Tigers, and I want to pick your brain on what you saw. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Auburn. Brian Smith joining us here on Locked On Auburn. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. And if you want more of Brian, check out Locked On Seminoles. He does a great job over there as well. So when you went to the Under Armour game, it was Blake Woodby, Fagans, Cale Ellis, and I'm missing one.
Jared Smith.
That's right. Jared Smith. Who impressed you the most of those four while you were down there?
Ooh, those are some really mature kids. First off, Auburn got great guys.
And Cale's a year younger than he's supposed to be.
It's ironic. The guys that run the Under Armour event, some of those guys are real O-line centric, and they brought him in despite him being an up class for an offensive 17. Lineman, which is uber rare. I don't think they've ever done that before. And he played center. So, like, I was watching him in drills, and the D linemen at this event are off the charts.
Sure.
And he was one of the guys getting talked about by people randomly, have zero to do with Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
That is about as good a sign as you're going to get. Yeah. Now, is he going to come in and win a starting job as a freshman? No. But he will be the next center at Auburn. And I'm cool with that. Like, he'll start as a sophomore, junior, start for a couple of years to get a chance to go to the NFL. He's up to 310 pounds. He told me they want him at about 315, which 5 pounds for a guy his size that's a bunch, and
right.
Like the way these kids eat, if you could ever see it, that's its own show.
Yeah.
But that kid never gets really talked about because the interior offensive lineman. I think he will play in the National Football League.
Cale Ellis, future NFL player.
Yeah, I really do. Mentality. Well, he loves Auburn.
The timing of him, reclassifying is crucial because Connor Lew, it's his third year. Is he going to be 3 and done? He could be. He's good enough to be.
I think that's the reason. They were, again, worst case scenario if you're a staff. How do we fix this? Mm-hmm. Look ahead. And Cale told me they asked him to do it, not the other way around.
Interesting. So, I mean, they're expecting him to be the guy after Connor.
That's my guess.
Which so nice to have a coaching staff that is looking ahead and planning ahead.
You have so many stories on that comment right there.
Or lack thereof, I guess.
Depends on your perspective.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So yeah, Cale Ellis. I mean, I talked to you about it. I've talked to a few other people about it. He just seems to be a consistent name where folks kind of labeled him as a winner of this thing for sure. You sent me a clip of Jared Smith, just a clean rep of him rushing the passer. So long, so good at extending his arms to create separation. Can he play as a freshman? Can he play day one?
Yeah, he can. My question, and it's his as well. He said, when I was like, what do you need to work on? And he said, it was nothing with pass rushing. It's like physicality, taking on the guy in front of him and engaging like the pressure at the point of attack. Run defense.
Yeah.
It's what separates defensive linemen that get drafted and those who do not. Can you handle the sheer physicality?
Especially those edge guys, because like they usually come in a little undersized and like when you're going up. Yeah, so and you're going up against, a 300-pound tackle who's like never missed a day in the gym. It's like, that's a lot. And I think we saw that struggle early on with Kieron Crawford, who transferred from Arkansas State. It took him a little bit of time to get going. And then the last few weeks of the season, it's like he finally adjusted and got going. It's just a time thing. It's like, how long is it going to take? Is it going to take him, an off season? Is it going to take him a full year? It's like, it just varies. And it's not bad. It's just every guy's different.
I think Jared will start out kind of the Crawford role. 3rd and 8. Oh, there's Jared on the field. Goal line, short yardage, 1st and 10. You will see very, very little of Jared in games 1 through 6. It's going to take some time. Now, he's dedicated, and he's a great guy, smart kid.
Do you think – so his path got more interesting, like his path to playing time this week, because Kieron is going to be – he's what J-Mac was going into the year last year. Right. They bring in Chris Murray from Sam Houston State. I really like him. I really like him. But then, what do we expect about Jamonta Waller and Joe Phillips?
That's what spring ball's for, brother. That'll be the topic that we all talk about in the media. Like, which one's going to be?
Yeah, Jamonta Waller, Joe Phillips, and Jared Smith. I don't think you can have 2 of them play. I don't think.
Somebody's going to have to sit or move around in positions, do different things. But this is the Southeastern Conference. It's big boy football. Yeah. Somebody could leave there too. It's not out of the question. That's part. That's again, you don't like it, but that's college football for every. Georgia's losing guys. Bama's losing guys. Like Bama yesterday, I looked. They lost like 23. It's Bama.
How terrible.
No, I know it's killing you, but it's. This is part of the football realm that we're in, and Auburn has done a better job than Bama by a mile. Replacing kids with local guys when they leave. And I think that has a lot of value.
Yeah. All right. Fagans and Winters.
Would be. Fagans. Yeah. Fagans is about as mature a kid. When I asked him about positions, like, where was he going to play in conjunction with Winters? He's like, we haven't talked about it, but I don't care. We'll figure it out when we get there.
Sure. Yeah.
Safety probably, but I don't care. And he's played nickel. He's played corner. He's played free safety. I saw him pick off a pass when he was a freshman in the state title game. He's always been a ball hawk. He's a guy that just has incredible burst, and he can cover from sideline to sideline, and he's incredibly intelligent. And he's picked up scheme at Thompson, which is a little more difficult because they know what they're doing there, obviously. I would be surprised if he and Winters, who wasn't at this game, but if they both didn't contribute immediately. Both of them will start on special teams, but at worst, both will be in the 2 deep before the end of September. If not, one of them might even start. But Fagan's intelligence and how he approached everything, how humble he was, blew me away.
I mean, that room all of a sudden is super deep with these 2 guys. 100%. And they're all young. Yep. They're all young. I mean, you look at Caleb Harris, who really leaned over his skis and impressed everybody this past season. Sylvester Smith, heard good things about Kinsley Faustin kind of behind the scenes, and then all these new guys coming. I mean, it's just a good situation. It's like recruiting does pay off. Like that's what this looks like. You're starting to see the fruit of it now.
Well, like Woodby was the other guy that, again, St. Francis.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about his speed, Zach. He only ran 4.31 the last time he ran. So we're going to have to work on that. Electronic, by the way. I mean, that's insane. The kind of athlete that they're bringing in. And Blake's one of the coolest recruits I've ever met. Like, he's the guy that ends up on Wall Street owning a company. Super intelligent. Great
Interesting.
personality.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's off the charts. And he just said that the reason he picked Auburn is the way they cared about him on and off the field. I thought that was pretty interesting. He went into that without me even asking. So,
oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And
he seems like a pretty, personable guy.
Like I'm telling you, he's the kind of guy that would, if he went into sales, would murder it.
Oh, yeah?
Because everybody likes him.
Yeah, he's just good at football. So we'll live 100%. With that. We'll live with that.
4-3-1 helps. Yeah,
the corner situation's interesting too. Like Kinsley Faustin played more at outside corner.
Sure.
Obviously you've got Kane Lee, Champ Anthony's return. Like, is he ready to go after his injury last year?
Big question in spring right there.
And then obviously Jay Crawford, like just the amount of position battles, both for starters and for first guys kind of off the bench type roles. Like they're up for grabs. They're up for grabs with these guys.
Well, answer the following question. This is based on something I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Any Iron Bowl you wanted to pick in the last 10 years, if you heard a report that Alabama had lost player X at any position, were you thinking that the Tide didn't have a guy behind there that was ready to roll? They always did.
Yeah, always. Right.
Auburn is getting to that point, especially the secondary. Would you say the secondary is the deepest spot on the roster for 2025? I think it's at least in consideration. Running backs up there. Receiver, obviously, at the top is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be DB. It has to be. I mean, you've got, assuming Champ Anthony's healthy, you've got 4 or 5 corners that you trust.
That's
right off the gate. And then at safety, you might have 5 or 6.
If you look at the teams that are in the Final Four of the playoff, what do they all have? NFL DBs. This is how you get there, man. I don't care which one of those 4 you pick. There's a team in that, or there's a player on that team. It's a first or second round pick of pretty much every one of them. Yeah. And some of them have multiple. Auburn wants to get to be in a championship level team. They're building their secondary as good as anybody. They might have had the best DB class in the country in 25. I think if I had to pick one, I would take Auburn's. There's a couple of LSU's, Notre Dame, just a few others are good, but Auburn's might be.
Auburn's was well-rounded though. Auburn brought in a freshman version of a backfield and just said, "Come on." It wasn't just all corners or just safeties. They got everything you need. Yeah,
they got balance because now you can't go and say, "Okay, well, you got Lee over here, so we're going to avoid him because the other guy sucks." Well, heck, the other guy's good, and the guy behind him is good. Again, Iron Bowl, you get wait to see guys are hurt. Auburn's to the point where if a starter's out, okay, it's not great, but they're to the point where the next guy's still really, really good and has a chance to play in the National Football League.
Auburn's defense got really lucky with how good Jay Crawford was.
Yeah, because he came in and balled. We knew he was good. We didn't know he was that good.
Right, and I thought he would eventually get to that point. I didn't think it was going to be year 1, but he's exceptional. He's exceptional. And we talked about that the week, I guess it was Under Armour last year, where he and Cam Coleman just went at it every rep. And it's that's what you want. That's what you want.
That's right.
he backed it up for sure. So exciting stuff. Exciting stuff for sure. We didn't even talk about Auburn's freshman defensive linemen that are coming in, but we'll do that another time. Brian, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
At FB Scout _Florida and Locked On Seminoles. Right now, transfer portal heavy, but we are, as Zach brought up earlier in the show, getting to the point where junior days are coming up. There's going to be a lot of commitments over the next 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah, Auburn, I would expect, will be one of the hotter teams because of how well they do junior days. They do it as good as really anybody.
Yeah, no, the staff knows how to do it for sure. Yeah, so be sure to give Brian some love. No question about it. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.